Chasing is a vibration born of lack. Anything born of lack carries a signal that gradually drives it away from you. Have you ever felt that the more you long for something, the more it eludes you? The more you wait for a message, the less it arrives? The more you long for others to see and understand you, the more you feel forgotten? This does not happen because you are not worthy, nor is it due to cruel fate. It happens because the energy you emit silent, yet powerful says, I lack. I need. I am not enough without that. Even if you smile, stay calm, or try to appear okay, your energy field is always more honest than your words, and it creates a corresponding response in reality. You do not attract with thoughts. You attract with frequency. And as long as your energy is running after and clinging, in that very moment, you are unconsciously pushing the thing you desire away. This is not a story of desire. It is a story of vibration. Only when you stop seeking, stop controlling, and stop asserting that you are lacking, do you return to the center where you no longer need to attract, but begin to shine. Number 1 theory of consciousness and vibration. Some vibrations need not be heard, yet they change an entire room. A person enters without saying anything, without doing anything special, yet all eyes turn to them. Conversely, there are people who, despite their best efforts, make others feel heavy or give off a subtle sense that something is off. This is not found in words. This is the energy field. And the energy field never lies. Jung did not call it vibrating energy in the modern spiritual sense, but he understood deeply that consciousness, both conscious and unconscious, is the living magnetic field. When you breathe, emit vibrations born of lack. From a place filled with craving, control, and anxiety, you are sending a signal that says, I do not have. I am afraid. I am not enough. And the universe, along with those around you, responds not to what you say, but to what you are. In analytical psychology, Carl Jung explained that every longing issued from a wounded ego activates the shadow within. The shadow is not only the negative part, but everything you refuse, push away, or dare not acknowledge in yourself. When you pursue love out of fear of loneliness, you pursue from your shadow the belief that you cannot be whole on your own. When you pursue success because you feel you lack worth, you act from an inner crack rather than authentic passion. Jung called this projection the phenomenon in which the unconscious mind casts unintegrated parts of ourselves onto the outside world. In Ion Researches into the phenomenology of the self, he wrote that projections change the world into a replica of one's unknown face. In other words, the world does not reflect reality, but mirrors the unseen wounds within us. Imagine you step into a new relationship. On the surface, you appear confident, joyful, and needing nothing. But deep inside, you check your phone constantly, waiting for every message, imagining countless scenarios if the other does not respond as hoped. This is a typical vibration born of lack. Even if you do not speak, that energy still radiates. The other person senses it not through words, but through the tension in your gaze, the rhythm of your heart, the silence between words. This makes them gradually withdrawn, not because they dislike you, but because they do not wish to be drawn into an energy that demands to be filled. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you face the true motivation beneath your actions, you will continue to be led by it, mistaking it for destiny." Many people try to attract what they want. They read law of attraction books, practice affirmations, and imagine an ideal future, but they fail to realize that it is not what you want that is attracted, but what you are. If your foundational energy emits from fear, from a sense of lack, from insecurity about yourself, you are simply sending a clear signal. I do not have it. I am not enough. And by the law of frequency, you will attract experiences that reinforce that reality. In different people, missed opportunities, relationships that mirror your self-doubt. Jung drew a clear distinction between the ego and the soul. The ego is the part that wants to control, plan, possess, and prove. The soul, on the other hand, is the part that needs no reason to be present. When you act from the ego, you always feel compelled to do something to be chosen, to be kept, to avoid loss. But when you live from the soul, you no longer need to pursue, because you recognize, I am myself, and if and what is meant to stay will stay. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung said that the soul demands your truth, not your loyalty to conformity. The soul does not need you to strive to please others. It needs you to have the courage to live in alignment with your inner truth. Vibrations born of lack are ultimately vibrations of fear, of abandonment, of unhealed memories, of an inner child still waiting for someone to come and say, "You are worthy. You are enough." But no one can bring that from the outside. If you have not first sent that signal from within yourself, as Jung said, who looks outside, dreams who looks inside, awakens. You no longer need to search. What you are seeking is not ahead, but in the frequency you emit with each moment. And if you shift that frequency from pleading to presence, from expectation to steadiness, from anxiety to trust, then you will no longer have to chase. Everything will find you not because you did it right, but because you have become the right person. Number 2. Story 1, Carla, and that is the profound truth Jung wants us to understand. You do not attract by what you wish for, you attract by what you are. When the energy within you continues to emit a signal of lack of waiting, of the fear of being abandoned, then the external reality will forever be a mirror reflecting that vibration. And to see how this operates, not only in theory but in real life, hear the story of Carla, a vivid and authentic example of what Jung called the psychic wound that cries louder than words. Carla is an intelligent, independent woman who is highly self-aware. At age 34, she experienced a painful breakup with the man who had been her whole world. Afterward, she did not flee from the pain. On the contrary, Carla embarked on a model healing journey, reading books, meditating, journaling, taking therapy courses, caring for herself, and rebuilding her self-esteem. On the outside, Carla appeared to be the ideal of a woman who had overcome her past. But there was one thing she could not explain. Each time she began a new connection, even if it was gentle and promising, everything always fell into the same orbit. The other person gradually became distant, the relationship grew fragile, and in the end, it broke a Monday, without any clear reason. This is where things became clearer, not through reason, but through a moment of profound awakening in an intensive therapy session, when the therapist looked straight into her eyes and said, "Your energy is not waiting for love, it is begging for confirmation." That remark struck the very core that all of Carla's healing efforts had missed. She had not truly let go. She had only done everything to prove that she was worthy of love. Although her exterior had changed, her inner energy still clung not to a specific person, but to a pattern. The person who would come to heal me. The person who would confirm that I am enough. Carla did not live in the presence of her new connections. She lived in the unconscious expectation that this time someone would act differently, so that she would no longer feel that she had failed in love. She was not loving. She was waiting to be rescued. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." We reach enlightenment not by imagining light, but by having the courage to face the darkness within ourselves. And the darkness that Carla had to confront was not her ex or her painful past, but the unconscious belief that she would not be whole unless chosen by someone else. That explains why all of her positive healing actions were still guided by a begging energy. It was not genuine autonomy. It was disguised control, a form of "I will love myself as long as someone confirms that I am lovable." But energy does not operate under conditions. Your field of vibration does not care about the checklist you have completed. It only responds to the signal of who you truly are inside. And from then on, Carla's reality continuously reflected a single lesson. When you demand confirmation, you are emitting a vibration that says, "I do not have enough." And the universe, as Jung pointed out, does not answer what you want but answers you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But if you still need someone else to confirm that, you are not truly yourself. You are only a shadow seeking an image. After that therapy session, Carla did not change her strategy to be loved. She changed her mindset. she did not force herself to stop feeling. She began to observe her impulses when meeting someone new. Each time she sensed herself expecting too early, she did not blame herself, but asked, "Am I loving this person, or am I waiting for them to confirm that I am enough?" And this self-awareness was the turning point of her vibration, not loving less, not moving slower, but loving from a place of fullness. From then on, her energy no longer sent a begging signal. She was no longer on the frequency of "choose me, so that I can be me." She had chosen herself. And when one chooses oneself, the world is no longer a place to be saved, but a place to live, to share, to shine. No chasing, no waiting, no proving. Simply being present. Because as Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The most terrifying thing is not rejection, but daring to accept oneself fully. And when you do that, you no longer need anyone to confirm anything. You become a field of fullness where no signal of lack resides. And that is why all you have ever sought begins to find you. Number 3. Mechanism of the inner world and Jung's analysis. When Carla stopped demanding confirmation from the outside, she not only transformed her way of loving, but also entered a deeper phase. She confronted the inner mechanism truly governing her life, because all of our experiences, whether connections, disappointments, or repeating emotional loops, originate from the psychological energy field emitted from the deepest layer of the self. In analytical psychology, Jung distinguished very clearly between desire that issues from the ego and the call of the self. When the ego longs for something not out of love, but out of emptiness, it unconsciously activates the unhealed, unintegrated parts of the mind, the parts Jung called the shadow. These parts do not vanish just because you think more positively. Instead, the more they are suppressed, the more they manipulate the energy you emit. The more you force yourself to become what you are not, the more you become an opposite shadow of yourself, not because you are fake, but because you have not faced where desire begins, which is lack. Try stopping and thinking about yourself. Have you ever entered a room and sensed something was off about someone, even though they were smiling brightly? Have you ever heard someone claim they have moved on, but still felt a muffled sadness emanating from them? This is the phenomenon of energy, not something mystical, but a living vibration arising from a psychological mechanism. Jung believed consciousness is not only words or thoughts, but also emotionally charged images accumulated in the unconscious and broadcast outward like a frequency. In Man and His Symbols, he wrote that the psyche consists essentially of images. It is a self-regulating system that expresses itself in images. Drop a like in the comments if you have ever sensed someone's energy simply by their presence. Listen on, because what you are about to realize may change how you connect with yourself. This explains why, even if you say "I am fine," "I have let go," or "I feel confident," others will still sense it if the true vibration inside you is trembling. The ego may lie, but energy does not. The danger is when the ego acts from fear, but attaches a positive label such as "I'm just trying" or "I'm in love." Then the shadow becomes truly powerful. As Jung warns, the acceptance of the shadow side of our nature is a moral problem. It is the very essence of individuation. Only when you dare to look at the vibration arising from darkness, control, fear, insecurity do you begin the journey of individuation, a journey back to the whole self, where no part needs hiding. Individuation, according to Jung, is not becoming a better version of oneself, but returning to the center of the self where all the fragments inside you are seen and reunited. When you still emit a vibration born of lack, you operate from the unhealed ego. But when you live from the center, from the self, you no longer need control, persuasion, or pursuit. You simply exist with inner richness. Then you no longer emit the signal "come to me so that I can feel complete," but you emit a silent field, "I am myself, and I am enough." Are you living from the center of your being, or are you sending out a signal begging someone to confirm you are worthy? Share in the comments, because that awareness is the first step to shifting the vibration you carry. There is a subtle truth Jung recognized early on. Others do not love you for what you do. They are drawn by the energy field you do not realize you are radiating. If that field issues from unintegrated darkness, You will attract people who activate your wound not to punish you, but to invite you to look more deeply at what needs healing. In Ion, Jung wrote that the self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both consciousness and the unconscious. The self is not only the center, but the totality embracing both the light and the darkness within you. So if you've ever wondered why you keep meeting the same type of person, or why you feel misunderstood even though you tried so hard, the answer may lie in the frequency you emit, not in what you think about yourself. Only when you dare to turn inward, not to hide or fix, but to integrate every part of yourself, will you enter the state Jung called the wholeness of the self. The state where you no longer need to send a begging signal, because you are transmitting the truth. Are you ready to return to the center of yourself? If so, comment a single word: present. Being fully present is what makes your energy magnetic. No need to seek, and yet you will attract everything that truly resonates with you. Number 4. Story 2. Natalia. After understanding how energy emitted from a wounded ego can unconsciously attract repeating experiences, we recognize an even more important truth: merely understanding Allah is not liberation. The intellect may declare, "I have let go," but if the energy inside still emits a signal of clinging, you remain on the same frequency, and the world will continue to mirror that, no matter how many books you read, videos you watch, or even when you proclaim you have healed. Natalia's story provides a clear and poignant illustration of this. Natalia, now 40, is a strong, deep woman who survived a toxic relationship that nearly drained her soul. After the breakup, she embarked on a journey of rebuilding herself. She studied self-love, attended therapy, practiced meditation, journaled, and even started a small blog to share her recovery. Everyone around her saw a woman who had overcome her pain, and Natalia believed it too. She felt confident, at peace, ready for a new connection. Until a man appeared. At first, Natalia maintained her balance. But just days into their initial conversations, she found herself checking her phone more often, analyzing every message, guessing what he truly thought. Each time he went silent even a little longer, a wave of anxiety washed over her. She did not voice it or act rashly, but her mind spiraled. If he does not reply, what does that mean? Did I do something wrong? Will this end the same way as before? In a pivotal therapy session, her therapist quietly observed and said, "Your mind has let go, but your energy is still holding on." Natalia was stunned. She had never imagined she could be faking it to herself. But the truth was that all her efforts, the meditation, the sharing, the writing, stemmed from a drive not to be the same as before, to guarantee that next time would differ. Deep inside, her energy still sent the old message: "I need something outside to make me feel safe, to ensure I will not be hurt again." Carl Jung wrote in the Red Book, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. No awakening occurs without passing through pain." Natalia was not wrong to believe she had let go. She had simply not reached the end of the truth. Her deepest fear was still quietly directing her energy. Unprocessed energy acts like a script that repeats in various forms. You change partners, environments, and behaviors, yet you draw experiences with the same core: abandonment, misunderstanding, insufficiency. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, the unconscious urge to relive an unresolved experience. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote, "The patient can only get well when he begins to see the contents of the unconscious and assimilate them into the total personality." Healing only happens when you dare to face the unconscious contents and integrate them into your whole being. The fact is, your vibration always speaks before your words. Others do not withdraw because you lack something specifically, but because they unconsciously sense an energy field demanding to be filled. They feel a burden you may not even recognize that you carry. Natalia did not utter a single plea, yet her energy field issued a clear request: "Give me certainty. Ensure I will not be hurt again." When that energy emerges, love cannot flow freely. It becomes distorted, burdened with a responsibility to heal that no one but you can bear. If you find yourself wondering, "Why do I keep attracting the same type of person?" Perhaps it is time to stop questioning the outside world and instead listen to yourself. Ask, what am I emitting that I dare not admit? Connection cannot grow on the foundation of energy bent by fear. The more you seek safety in others, the further you drift from your center. And the world, as Jung said, does not respond to what you want but to what you are. Until you change that frequency, you will star in the same drama under a different title. The good news is that the moment you begin to recognize this, as Natalia did, you have already started to shift your vibration. And that alone without anyone's confirmation is enough to transform your entire story. Number 5. The difference between control and surrender. Imagine a moment you sigh, looking at your phone, and think you will not text anymore. You are fine. Minutes later, you secretly unlock your phone, waiting for a message or assign something to prove you are still cared for. On the surface, you tell yourself you are letting go. But inside, your entire nervous system is on high alert. That is not peace. That is control, disguised as silence. At that intersection between mature behavior and lingering clinging energy begins a hard-to-swallow lesson 1 that leads to deep transformation. Control is not strength. It is a survival reflex of an unhealed ego. Natalia recognized this not through words, but through experiencing it again, in her body, in her energy, in how she faced uncertainty. That is when the door to the core distinction between control and surrender opened not by knowledge, but by vibrational experience. We often equate control with power, action, and doing something to ensure nothing falls apart. In truth, control is a contraction of consciousness fear, wrapped in a reasonable explanation. It is the ego trying to manage uncertainty through analysis, speculation, intervention, and, at times, feigned indifference. Jung taught that the ego seeks to control what the soul has not yet integrated. That mask of logic makes control a wound. You do not act from strength, you act from fear, unwilling to admit it. Imagine beginning a new relationship, and the other person texts less for a day. So you feel compelled to do something. You send a message first. Do you stay silent to see if they notice? Why? Do you ask indirect questions to guess their state of mind? None of these actions are wrong in themselves. But consider the inner state driving these behaviors. If it stems from an inability to bear uncertainty, then you are not connecting, you are controlling. Jung spoke not only about behavior, but about the motive beneath it. He wrote that, when an inner situation remains unconscious, it appears outside as fate. If you fail to recognize that you are governed by fear of losing control, you will continue to attract situations that force you to control yourself until you either exhaust yourself or awaken. You either live from your center or steer everything from the fear of abandonment. Recognizing this is the first step to letting go, not from fatigue, but from awareness. Surrender is not standing still, waiting for a miracle. Surrender is the strongest act of a mind at rest in itself. It is when you no longer need to force reality to follow an ego script. It is when you no longer need to check, control, steer, or edit reality because you trust that what belongs to you arrives without effort, and what does not only brings pain when held. A vivid illustration is the healing journey of Lena. When she began a new relationship, everything felt harmonious at first. But gradually, with each time her partner became silent, Lena started analyzing every punctuation, every pause, and every word choice. She did not blame or show it outwardly, yet inside she was silently squeezing herself and her partner with expectations and worry. Inevitably, the energy between them began to withdraw. When she asked why, her partner could only say something felt heavy without any clear cause. Lena realized it was not that her partner was wrong, but that she still operated from a place of control disguised as wanting to understand. Jung did not teach letting go as a mere technique, but as a process of inner maturity. He taught that surrender is not weakness, but it is the courage to stop waging war against yourself. It is when you no longer need certainty to feel safe. No longer need another's reaction to feel loved. No longer need control to protect yourself from abandonment. If you live in the energy of clinging to avoid loss, remember this: Control does not keep you safe. It only keeps you away from real living. Sometimes, the most essential step is not knowing the next move but daring to stand still and do nothing. To feel what you still cling to out of fear rather than love. You may have seen yourself controlling under the guise of seeking reassurance that you are not alone. Now, you have another choice. Share the phrase, "I am letting go." If you choose to step out of control energy and into a magnetic state where life comes not by being pulled but only by trust. Number 6. The power of presence but surrender does not mean you disappear. Not controlling does not mean you become passive. This brings us to a dimension few truly understand, what Carl Jung called the true center of Detachment. Spiritual life. The power of presence. If control is action born of fear, presence is a holistic being not arising from doing, but from an inner state of grounded calm that demands nothing from the world. It is the energy that does not chase grabal, does not defend, does not seek affirmation. It simply is. Vibrational presence is not measured by how long you meditate each day or how many seconds you can stay silent. It is the living energy field you emit when your mind, emotions, and body no longer race toward the future or recoil into the past. It is when you are truly not occupied by worry, expectation, or hidden fear. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that freedom stretches only as far as the limits of our consciousness. If you are not fully present, you still live within the unconscious sphere of control, where your energy reacts instead of choosing. Think of someone you've met whose mere entrance into a room brought you comfort, safety, or renewed vitality. They may not be strikingly handsome, talkative, or eager to prove anything, yet they show up fully. That is the power of presence. No showmanship. No tactics. Yet the entire space around them shifts. Because when you are present with yourself, you need nothing to make an impression. You are the impression. If you are still reading, pause for a moment. Put down your phone and close your eyes for 5 seconds. Notice whether you are here with me or if your body is seated while your mind has wandered elsewhere. This is a small test of presence. If you realize you are not fully here, you are not alone. Because presence does not come from intention. It comes from practice. Jung described the process of returning to the center of the self-individuation as a journey through layer upon layer of illusion, wounds, and unconscious reflexes until nothing remains but unconditional presence. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote that the self is a union of opposites par excellence. Only when you stop striving to become something smarter, more likable, more independent can you begin to be fully present as your complete, undivided self. A beautiful example of this comes from Daniela's story. For years, she fell into the same cycle. Meet someone new, feel excitement, then let anxiety take over. She began analyzing every message, waiting for positive reactions to feel safe. Yet all of it left her exhausted. Until one day, she made what she called the decision of radical stillness. She did not withdraw from life. She withdrew from reaction. She stopped chasing connection, stopped strategizing, and each day, simply practiced presence in her body, breath, heartbeat, silent space. Without forcing herself to feel better, only to show up more authentically. A week passed. Then 2. Nothing dramatic occurred. But gradually, she realized she no longer felt turmoil when she didn't receive a response. She no longer clung to every small change as if it were a lifeline. She felt clear. From that clarity, the connections that came to her no longer repeated old scripts. No tension. No struggle. Because she was no longer attracted by luck but by a magnetic field of grounded presence. You may ask, how do I attain that presence? The answer is not in a checklist. It lies in letting go of having to do to become. Jung never taught self-improvement like a machine. He invited us to live fully as the self that already exists. He wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that becoming does not come from chasing something new, but from pausing long enough to realize you have always been here. Just be present. If this resonates, leave a single word in the comments. Present. Not as a YouTube habit, but as a reminder that you once forgot yourself somewhere and are now returning. No more chasing, no more controlling. Just presence. From there, everything begins to shift. Not because of what you do, but because at last you have truly become yourself. Number 7. Vibrational detachment but presence, though powerful, does not drop like a gift. It results from a deep inner discipline, a willingness to stop reacting, observe instead of controlling, and to face oneself in the silence we once tried to fill. Presence cannot live in a mind driven by anxiety. That is when you need to step into the key Jungian practice of vibrational detachment, not to become cold, but to return to your whole self, undistracted by the need for external validation. Vibrational detachment does not mean indifference or lack of desire. It is the highest commitment that you will not betray yourself just to keep an unhealthy connection. It begins by daring to notice subtle signs that you are pursuing from an energy of lack. Not because you are weak, but because you have grown accustomed to a dependent vibration. That vibration may speak for you through every message, every pause, every glance. You may have felt unable to bear a moment of silence in a relationship. Each minute without a reply sending your mind into chaos, your imagination racing, and your hand itching to act or write something, ask a question, or check the other person's status. That is not your true nature. That is the frequency of lack hijacking your system. Jung warned in The Psychology of the Transference that an activated complex puts us momentarily under the control of an autonomous personality. It means our unhealed wound takes over our actions. While we believe we are reacting reasonably, though, we are manipulated from within. Or you may find you cannot stand not knowing what the other person thinks or feels. You constantly need confirmation, signs, or repeated assurances to feel safe. But that need does not arise from the present, it arises from a hidden anxiety that has lived in you for a long time. If you find yourself easily triggered, unable to wait, always needing explanations to steady your emotions, then you are likely not loving, but communicating through the vibration of lack. And the world senses it as a cry for help, even if you never speak a word. The way out of this invisible cycle lies not in more action, but in learning to stop the moment the impulse arises, the moment you want to send an unnecessary message, the moment you feel compelled to do something to hold gupper. The connection. Jung pointed out in the Red Book that in each of us, there is who we do not know who speaks to us in dreams, telling us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves. When you pause, you begin to listen to that deep part that needs no control, no reaction, only presence. You can begin with a small step. Do nothing for the first 3 minutes of restlessness. Just breathe. Do not touch your phone. Do not seek distractions. Then ask yourself whether you want to act because you are present or because you are afraid. That is the practice of vibrational detachment, where you act not from anxiety, but from your quiet center. Create a daily space of silence, even if just 10 minutes. No screens. No one else. Just you and your breath. In that space, whisper, "I do not chase. I do not cling. I am present." You do not need to believe it immediately. Just repeat it until the new vibration imprints on your body, bit by bit. And if you still return to the old question of how to be loved, then invert it and ask, which part of me still does not believe I am worthy? Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Vibrational detachment is not about doing better, but about daring to live more mindfully, noticing what is happening, and choosing not to repeat it. Then, when you stop chasing, stop demanding, and stop striving to be seen, a miracle begins. You become what you once sought. You no longer send signals of lack. You no longer manipulate with fear. You no longer need someone to understand you to feel valuable. You do not attract by strategy, sweet words, or artificial perfection. You attract by the true frequency of who you are when you are fully present and no longer denying yourself. Radiate. Do not chase. You do not need to attract. You need to live in tune with your frequency. True radiance does not arise from effort, but from clarity in the energy of life. When you stop pursuing not only an action, but also an unconscious vibration, you no longer run toward what you want. You remain in your truth. And from that still point, you emit an irresistible field, a silence full of attraction, a state of ease that allows what does not fit to fall away and what is right to come to you. Therefore, you do not need to become someone else. You only need to return to the center of yourself. Let the stillness speak for you. Let your energy radiate before you enter a room. Let the fullness within be the unspoken call the world cannot ignore. You no longer need to be chosen because you have chosen yourself. And that is the vibration that cannot be resisted. If these insights touch the depths of your being, the desire to live authentically, to be free, and to heal from within, then do not leave yet. Subscribe to continue the journey back to yourself, where you need not chase anything because everything essential has always been within you.